Hello, and we are back again with Empire of the Cop Insider. I'm your host, Sarah Keeling, and we've got covering Liverpool's Neil Jones here with us today. Neil, I mean, it's fair to say that Mo Salah promised Liverpool would be quite all right without him whilst he was at the African Cup of Nations. I'm not sure how many people believed him, but I think it's fair to say he was absolutely right. Since the 4-2 win over Newcastle, we've beaten Arsenal in the FA Cup, Fulham in the Carabao, Bournemouth in a action-packed second half of action at the Vitality Stadium. 4 goals without reply against one of the informed sides in the league. I believe since their 6-1 loss to City, they've secured 19 out of a possible 24 points, excluding the defeat to us last night. But this Liverpool side just keeps on powering through.
Yeah, and I feel a bit vindicated in terms of how I thought the game would pan out. It wasn't dissimilar to how I felt it would go down at the Vitality. I maybe didn't think it'd be 4-0, but I certainly thought it'd be one that Liverpool would maybe have to suck up a bit of punishment and take the time and find a way into the game. But once they did, and once they got that first goal, they were pretty impressive, I have to say, and dominant performance. Obviously, the biggest away win of the season, and I think that's probably something that slipped under the radar a little bit. I feel like we have conversations on this show, and we often talk about the negatives around Liverpool and sort of, is it going to last? Well, the top of the Premier League, and they're also top of the away Premier League table. We've had conversations about away form and can they go and win games like this. They're answering pretty much every question that gets put in front of them at the moment, and it's good to see. It's only January, but if you want to be putting yourself in the position to challenge for major trophies, to be challenging for Premier League titles and everything else that comes with it, then you couldn't have done much more than Liverpool have done in the opening 22 games of this season.
No, absolutely. I think a large part of that has been the fact that despite all the sort of injuries that have been creeping up, the lads that sort of Jurgen has been sort of putting in have very much repaid the faith. I mean, Neil, I know you're at least as much a fan as I am as bigging up sort of the academy lads. So let's start off with sort of Connor Bradley, because I mean Jurgen was very impressed with the performance after the match. I think he bemoaned the sort of missed header, but that was pretty much the only piece of critique. Talking about how he has all the sort of ingredients to thrive in that fullback role. It's another senior start in which he does repay the manager's faith, and he does showcase effectively the superb work the academy has been doing in recent years. It's what have you made of this sort of latest performance from him?
Yeah, I'm really impressed. Like everyone, I think with Connor. I mean, I think it reflects well. You're right, absolutely on the work the academy have done, and obviously Connor came at 16, so he's been at the club for 4 years now, and they've obviously prepared him for what it takes to play for Liverpool. He's obviously got talent and he's obviously got a decent mindset about him. But I think what it also reflects really well on is the environment that Liverpool have got at the moment with that can welcome and is hospitable to young players. You see some clubs where a young player comes in and maybe they get left on their own a little bit, and some of the senior players potentially are too wrapped up in their own worries, or they're struggling to form themselves. Maybe the manager is a little bit of a flip flopper, and he changes his system from one week to the other, or he doesn't fully commit to a young player. But with Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool, it's always really been the case that if a young player's brought up, he's treated as if, well, you're good enough, you're here for a reason, let's see it, and you're backed to be yourself, not just to come in and sort of fill a hole, but to be yourself and express yourself. And you've seen that obviously in the best possible way with Trent Alexander-Arnold. You've seen it with Curtis Jones. You've seen it in a different way with Harvey Elliott. In the last couple of years in particular. But you can list others as well that when they've been called upon, and maybe they've only been called upon for half a season, a month, 6 games, they've been able to do it. Think of Tyler Morton in 2022. Think of Kate Gordon starting a League Cup semi-final. Think of Ben Doak at times. Stefan Bajcetic last season, and now Connor Bradley looks like he's one that's at least given himself a shot at being around the first team in the long term. And I really like him. I like the manner in which he plays. Obviously, I think he's got clear areas that he needs to develop. He's still very skinny and slight, and you can see sometimes when he gets involved in physical duels that maybe it's going to be a challenge for him. But I look at the other stuff. I look at the ability on the ball. I look at the way that he can, get into the final third consistently as a fullback. And I look at the mentality that he shows to stick to his task and to really get stuck in and to do the job that the manager needs him to do. I think he's made a very, very promising start to his senior career.
I think as well, what it does give Liverpool is the option almost. We've had this thing almost, if Trent's not there, who do we bring in? Do we need to sign someone? Do we need to potentially spend, a lot of money? We talked on the last show that we had together about how Joe Conte could potentially save Liverpool millions. You could argue very much the same for Conor Bradley. And I think amid sort of the long-term question that's sort of on everyone's mind in terms of where Trent best fits in this Liverpool side, whether it is indeed midfield in the future, that does then give Liverpool the option of going, well, if we do want to make that move and say, for instance, Conor Bradley does continue on his sort of current trajectory and improves and certainly builds on his frame, as you rightly mentioned, that is an option Liverpool could explore in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And you want squad depth, don't you? And they've shown how difficult it is to find right backs. They've literally they had an England right back in Nathaniel Klein who wasn't good enough for what Liverpool needed. They obviously had the Welsh international right back in Nico Williams who wasn't deemed good enough. They tried to buy a Scottish player in Calvin Ramsey. Yeah, maybe Northern Ireland's the answer. Maybe the other one of the home nations is is the answer. But it's difficult, and it's also difficult to recruit because you could go and say, well, spend some money and buy an established right back. But does an established right back want to do that? Does he want to put himself in that position where actually Trent's not been injured for 2 years, and that means that you've only played in the League Cup or a couple of Europa League group games or whatever? So it is difficult. I think what it does give Liverpool is it gives them in-game options. Of course, they can move Trent in there safely, knowing that they can bring on a right back. They can obviously use Joe Gomez as a sort of a floating kind of utility player, if you like, as wherever needed. And also I think it just gives some hope as well to some of the younger lads at the academy that, it was put to me early in the season when this was about Jarell Quansah, funny enough. I was speaking to someone around Liverpool, the club, and they said, well, this is what the academy's for, really. The academy's for your fourth, fifth choice centre back, your second choice right back. Your sort of your sixth forward player who's going to come on in the odd game. People I think do get carried away a little bit with the academy is they have to be ready immediately, and people like Trent probably are the exception to that rule. The real success of the academy is having players who can fit into the squad and do what Quansah's done this season and do what Bradley's doing at the moment. Let's not forget, we had Owen Beck come off the bench, obviously, in the game was won, but got a chance to make his Premier League debut. Had Bobby Clark obviously doing bits at Arsenal and coming off the bench against Bournemouth. Kate Gordon on the pitch at the end. I think there was a statistic, it was the first time in I think it's nearly 60 years that Liverpool had 6 players 21 or under in a league game. And then they had Curtis, who's 22, and they had Konate and others who were 24. Darwin, they had Quansah, who was unused, so they could have had even more. So it does bode well. I mean, it is out of necessity in a way, but there's nothing wrong with that. I remember Robbie Fowler coming into Liverpool's team out of necessity in sort of 1993, and he made his impact. I think Trent came in out of necessity to Liverpool's team. So good on them, good on these young lads that they're, in a difficult time or a potentially difficult time for Liverpool, they're making it a lot easier for the manager and the rest of the players.
I think necessity ultimately breeds opportunity. And, if we get, these players get the minutes, get some time in the limelight, get to show off their capabilities. I mean, Liverpool are ultimately stronger for it. We've come out of this period with the wins, as we said, and I think it bodes well for everyone, really, and it's fair play to the academy for all the hard work they're doing behind the scenes. You mentioned Curtis Jones, and I do want to talk about Curtis Jones as another academy product as part of the midfield sort of conversation. I mean, it's a pretty gutting sight, I suppose, and it's sort of seeing him sort of walk off. I think he's done the sensible thing. I think he's sort of gone, I'm feeling something here, I'll take myself off here. So hopefully, that indicates perhaps that he's avoided the worst possible results for that injury, because I'd imagine that Jurgen's going to be quite upset if it is a serious one, because he's been so reliable this season. We talk about how much balance he brings to the midfield. He's so reliable on the ball. He finishes every game in or around sort of the 90% mark for sort of passes successfully completed. You can just trust that if you stick him there, he'll be absolutely fine, whatever the circumstance.
You're right. It is a worry. I mean, I suppose if you're glass half full, you'd say, well, Liverpool just gone 3-0 up, and he sat down on the pitch and sort of made it clear that give them time to get a replacement ready, and he was able to walk off. Obviously, it wasn't sort of, he didn't look in obvious pain, but yeah, if you're unable to continue because you feel something in muscle, the chances are you're going to miss the next game and probably the game after that. Fingers crossed that's not the case. I think Liverpool could really do with them at Fulham on Wednesday, and then they could give them a rest at the weekend against Norwich. But you're looking at those next two games after that in the league, Chelsea and Arsenal. You want to have Curtis Jones in your team because, like you say, he gives that balance. And I thought it was interesting that Jurgen sort of described the first half, and he explained how he'd spoken to Curtis at half time. I think he basically said that, didn't he? He said tactically we weren't quite right. We weren't getting it right with the way we were playing. And he said, and I had a word with Curtis, and that just shows you the responsibility that he's got in the team. That that he's so important to the way the team plays, but B, that he's trusted that when I explain it to you, you'll get it and you'll be able to fix it. And fix it, he did in the second half. I thought he was terrific. And you look at the part he played in the first goal. Obviously, a lovely positional, a lovely position he takes up, great first touch and a quick pass. But then after that, he McAllister really got bossed the game, didn't he? They just looked so in control. As I say, he's very reliable on the ball. He very rarely gives it away. He very rarely finds himself in a position where he can't protect the ball, or he's not in a position to go and try and win the ball. So yeah, he's become an essential part of this Liverpool team. And I mean, we're hoping for some good news on the injury front this week with Szoboszlai, maybe with Trent, maybe with Robertson. Obviously, still got Tsimikas getting closer to his return, but that would be it would be a blow if Curtis was to join the missing list, even if it was for 1 or 2 games, because he's very, very important.
No, as you say, that he's taking on more responsibility, and it is sort of proving a lot of the sort of doubters wrong. It wasn't sort of that long ago you get so many sort of neutrals, even some Liverpool fans sort of saying, he's not that important a midfielder in sort of the grander context. But if anything, he's proving otherwise. And certainly you mentioned McAllister there. There've been so many doubts. So his capabilities in that sort of number 6 role. But I think it's fair to say he's very much proving, his ability to sort of play that role. I mean, some of the stats in the match: 87% pass accuracy, 15 ball recoveries, 12 ground duels won, 9 tackles, 4 key passes. He's having a lot of influence there in that sort of holding 6 role.
I thought he was.
Is that a good enough option for the long term?
Good enough option. He's a World Cup winner. He plays for Argentina. Exactly. He's played in the Premier League. I think Jurgen was clearly making a point after the game to Jamie Carragher and Sky, wasn't he? He said that basically you all say that he can't play at number 6. Well, we're top of the league, and he's played most of the season in that role. I know Endo had a good spell before he went off to the Asia Cup, but McAllister's been Liverpool's go-to player in that position for the bulk of this season, and they've had really good results. I think that was his best all-round performance for Liverpool, I think, this season.
Absolutely.
He even in the first half when it was a bit of a sticky game, I think he was the one who rose above it and looked like he had the answers. He was playing some lovely passes. I mean, the one he hit out to Nunez, right to left in the first half, was remarkable. But he played a few of those, little ones where he turns and plays it around the corner and into feet, and we know that he can do that, and we know as well, really, that he can do the defensive side of it. We've seen him do it at Brighton, albeit from a slightly more advanced position, maybe. But we know that he's got bite, that he's got awareness. He can read the game. Maybe it was just around those early days, just getting used to a new team, new surroundings, getting the right structure around him. I think Curtis Jones has been quite important in that sense. Obviously, having the legs of Szoboszlai next to him for the first part of the season helped. I think he's a fine player, McAllister. I think he's the least of Liverpool's worries. I think the only worry is probably keeping him fit at this moment in time, because, like you say, some of them are dropping like flies. A couple of them are still away at international tournaments. So you need all the bodies you can get, and yeah, I don't expect to see him playing against Norwich, for example, on Sunday, because I think Liverpool need to wrap him in cotton wool at the moment.
No, absolutely. We have to make the most of this. So the options sort of use the squad at our disposal. I was wondering if you saw the sort of the Sky's coverage sort of post-match when they were discussing sort of the performance of the front line. Carragher was talking about Diogo Jota and sort of comparing the quality of his finishing to some of the best strikers in our history: Suarez, Fowler, Torres, Salah, even. Where do you personally rank sort of Jota in that regard? I mean, I can't believe some of his finish, even that first one. Which is such a tight angle to score from. It's so pinpoint. It's so precise. I think Carragher is right to be drawing those kind of comparisons. But I'd be curious to see where sort of most people think he does rank amongst some of the best finishers.
Yeah, I think he's got Fowler-esque traits about him. You know, he's quite two-footed. Obviously, he's good, really good in the air. Despite not being, huge in size. There are elements that remind me of Fowler. He's very uncomplicated with his finishing, and he finds the corners quite a lot. If I compare him to someone like Diaz, for example, and this is not to sort of denigrate one, but I feel like Diaz is quite predictable in what he's going to do with his finishing. He often wants to cut in and look for that sort of one into the far corner. Jota's got a variation in his finishing. That, like you say, the first goal he scores yesterday, I'm not sure Nunez, for example, scores that goal. I'm not sure Gakpo scores that goal. It's very Jota type. It's uncomplicated. It's just hit hard and hit accurately. And yeah, he's definitely got that way about him. He's the one out of Liverpool's front five, really. If you want that striker type finish, he's the one who's going to provide it. Obviously, that's even allowing for Salah, who gets goals by incredible numbers and incredible variation in his goals. But Jota's the one who gets the number 9 sort of finishes. I think it reflects well on all of them. Four really good finishes, really. I mean, I think Nunez's 2 were very, very good, one touch finishes, and the type that we're keen to see him score more of. Albeit his all-round performance or his all-round contribution remains high, we still want to see him put away more of those chances. I mean, Jota's second one is the worst piece of play and the best piece of play all in one. Fair play to him for that. But that's another clinical finish, isn't it? And Liverpool I think they've been guilty a little bit at times this season in certain games of not being clinical, and not taking advantage of dominance or opportunities in games. But they didn't let themselves down in that regard against Bournemouth. I think they had 8 shots in the penalty area in the second half and put 4 of them in the net. So that's all you can ask for. Not many teams have been to Bournemouth this season and done what they've done. So yeah, keeping them fit again. I'm repeating myself, but keeping those players fit, getting Mo Salah back fit as well. That'll give Liverpool a chance. I think, Virgil van Dijk, I've got a quote here actually, I think from Virgil van Dijk. He said, what did he say? He said, if we stay in the game, no matter which game, then we always have a big chance to win with our quality up front. And I think that's the best way to sum it up. Liverpool knew they were going to win games this season. It was a case of whether they could tighten up the rest of the team and become more solid, more resilient. They've done both, and fair play to them. It's got them into a great position.
I mean, it's been very reflected in the results, hasn't it? You get, I mean, Liverpool, it's very much a tale of 2 halves. We always do seem, but I suppose that's the point. We do always seem to improve in the second half, provided that we are still involved in the game. You can kind of trust that, Jurgen will have a chat with, as you say, with Jones and sort of say, right, I need this sort of tactically. We need to approach this differently in the second half. And Liverpool do come out of the blocks a lot quicker. You mentioned sort of Nunez. One of the key stats that sort of emerged after the game was that he was the first player in the Premier League to reach 10 goals and 10 assists in all competitions. This season, 20 goal contributions in 31 games at a rate of 1 goal or assist every 87.85 minutes. Not bad for a flop, I have to say. I mean, Neil, I don't know about you, because I appreciate, we talked about this. He does need to improve various aspects of his game, mainly perhaps his finishing, because while I appreciate he's not the finished product, it's incredibly frustrating to be hearing this narrative about him week after week, the suggestion that he's a borderline flop, the suggestion that he's wasteful to the point of uselessness. When you have players like, for instance, Rasmus Højlund around, where the narrative is seemingly a lot more forgiving and patient and encouraging. I mean, when can we expect this to? I mean, will this flip if that wastefulness suddenly becomes, Haaland-esque levels of finishing?
Yeah, well, when he's got his Premier League medal around his neck, I think that might change a few people's opinion. I agree. I mean, I've sort of got into this feeling with them around. Use Roberto Firmino as a comparison, really, and we never talked about Roberto Firmino's goals really when he was at Liverpool. I know he had, he generally got you 14, 15 goals a season. I know he had one real good season, didn't he, in the 17-18, where he got 27, I think. But he genuinely got you the same amount of goals every season. He got you roughly the same amount of assists every season. But we never talked about Roberto Firmino missing chances or being wasteful or needs to score more or improve his finishing, whatever it was, because everyone knew what he brought to the team. Or, well, everyone at Liverpool, certainly, or every Liverpool fan knew what he brought to the team and the difference that he made to that attack. I feel the same about Nunez. I think the difference is that Nunez gets more chances, more obvious chances. And so people feel like he's costing Liverpool, when actually, if you watch games, can you imagine Liverpool if they didn't have Darwin Nunez at times this season, how little thrust they might have had, or how different it would have looked in terms of their ability to upset and unsettle defences? He influences pretty much every game he plays, through his movement, through his aggression, through his his wear rate, his willingness, and to that end, really, I feel like it's just time to sort of take him for what it is. He got 15 goals last season. He's well on target to get more than that this season. He's obviously got assists. Like I say, double figures for assists is not bad for a centre forward, at all. I don't ever recall Haaland getting those kind of numbers. Don't recall probably Ruud van Nistelrooy, people like that, getting those kind of numbers. So you can't have everything. It'd be nice if we could, but you can't have everything. You can't have him scoring 35 goals a season, setting up 25 and taking every single chance that comes his way. It isn't reasonable to expect. So I think from a Liverpool point of view, just look at, is he influencing the game in a positive way? Yes. If that's with goals, that's even better. If it's with assists, then great. But no matter what, and even if he doesn't get on the mark or he doesn't set up a goal, he's definitely making Liverpool a more difficult team to play against and giving them a chance of winning games, which is what they've been doing all season long.
No, absolutely, and ultimately, it's Liverpool have come away with the points thanks in large part to him.
Do you know what I'd love to? Do you know what I'd love to hear? I'd love to. I should probably try and get on this, but I'd love to hear what Andy Carroll thinks of
oh my word, yeah.
Because the disrespect that's shown to Nunez is clear, but it's also to Carroll. It's like, well, what does it mean? Sort of Andy Carroll scored. Played for England, played plenty of games in the Premier League, scored big goals. This weird comparison. It doesn't do anyone any favors, does it? It's not. It's a strange, a real strange thing that people have done. And I tell you, I wrote to me stuff today. I think Andy Carroll would be quite pleased to be compared to Darwin Nunez. I think he'd absolutely love him as a player because he gets stuck in. He makes defenses, edgy, and yeah, he's 24 years of age and 100 goals in his career now. That was as well, wasn't it? Yesterday, I think he's just got to 101. So he's not doing too badly as Darwin.
No, not too badly. As you say, I think it may have to come down to the point where you see him with a Premier League medal, a Champions League medal next season, perhaps. Before this sort of chance died down. At the minute, I think it just fuels him. To be honest, I think he's one of those players that seems to sort of, you get a reaction from him when these sort of chants are around him. I do want to talk about sort of where we are with the points now, because it's a 5-point gap that we've opened to City. I should stress they do have a game in hand, of course, to play, but it's another difficult win, against an informed side in the Premier League. To kind of just say to City, fine, keep putting the pressure on us, but we'll turn around and put the pressure right back on you. We're very much in this for the long haul. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's way too early to be talking about where Liverpool will finish this season. And certainly, it's not a big question I'd like to put to you whilst I'm sitting on the fence getting splinters. But Liverpool are very much in this for the title challenge. We may not be able to comfortably say there will be Premier League winners at the end of the season, but you can be sure that they'll be there or thereabouts.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, they've got difficult games, but everyone's got difficult games at this stage of the season, obviously with injuries and with just the strength of the league. So there's a long way to go, but yeah, Liverpool have put themselves 20. They're top of the league, the top of the away league. They've got the best goal difference in the league. They've lost one game in the league, or since going back to April. There's enough evidence there now to say that no, this isn't just a sort of a lucky run or a brief purple patch. This is a sustained period of excellent form for Liverpool, and that's what's given them the chance. They've obviously got that spectre if they can stay sort of right where they are now. They've got the spectre of City coming to Anfield later in the season as well, so there is the chance for that real 6-pointer that could almost fire you to the title, or the sort of the Hail Mary. If it's gone wrong, you can fire yourselves back into the title with a victory. So there's lots to suggest that Liverpool are going to be right there at the end of the season. I heard, I listened to TalkSport on Saturday when Arsenal were playing Crystal Palace and they went 5-0 up, and I heard TalkSport say, "Oh, Arsenal have fired themselves back into the title race." And you think, well, they've beaten Crystal Palace at home. It's sort of, it's to be expected, but that's what Liverpool have done. They've put it on these other teams that if you don't win, and you do drop a couple of points, it can all of a sudden look like, oh, they might be out of sight. So the pressure is on Liverpool as the leaders, but it's also being put very firmly on those below them and behind them, because they know that at this moment in time, Liverpool aren't slipping up. They're not going to Bournemouth and treading on a banana skin. They're not going to Burnley on Boxing Day and finding it tough. They're not, sort of missing chances against Newcastle and not finding a way through. They go and do that. You even look at the cup win at Arsenal. How many players they had missing and changing the team and all that, and they go and win. Everything at the moment from Liverpool is laying down the gauntlet to the others to say that, are you going to come on this ride with us? And listen, I think if they can get out of the next 2 games 4 points, Chelsea and Arsenal, I don't see any reason they can't get 6, by the way, but if they can get 4 points out of the next 2 and then go into February with that sort of momentum still there, I think they're going to take some stopping.
Looking at some of the players that we are, to get some good news, you say about Szoboszlai, Robertson, Tsimikas, then alleviates a lot of pressure in the back line. You're looking at sort of players like Gomez, who then you can just use primarily, as a centre half, as sort of right back cover, maybe left right back cover. Now you've got Conor Bradley.
You'll have Endo back. You'll have Endo back next month. You'll have Salah back next month as well. So yeah, there's a lot's been made of De Bruyne coming back for City. But that's fine. But Liverpool have got players as well that are going to make a big difference to their prospects and their ability to change games, and they've already been doing pretty well without those players as well. So yeah, it does bode well.
Either who, both in their own right can make an impact on Liverpool's season, especially that man, the Spanish maestro Thiago Alcantara, would certainly make a difference to Liverpool's season if he can get back in time to make an impact. I mean, it's hard, because I remember sort of speaking to you about a couple of weeks ago, and sort of saying, I think we both sort of agreed Liverpool could do with a signing if they can make the right season and have that sort of reassurance of cover. But I'm almost increasingly of the mind that Liverpool could very well get to the season without, because of, certainly the lads that we are seeing back, we're getting through this difficult period in January, and as you say, we're building some momentum. I mean, as I'm saying this, I am holding on to the desk for dear life, like the door of the Titanic. It's into this period without sort of more midfielders potentially dropping off, without defenders dropping off and leaving us in a bit of bother. But share that viewpoint in that we just shouldn't. I know there's obviously a grander context at play, of course, with the sort of the PSR rules, financial fair play, and it certainly seems that a lot of clubs are sort of almost looking at the landscape and seeing where letting until the summer. But do you think it's just more that's what's coming get to the summer and reevaluate the sort of environment?
Yeah, I think it was always looking quite likely that Liverpool would, more likely that Liverpool wouldn't sign someone than they would. I don't think that's changed, but obviously, yeah, when you see Kanate go down, you think, oh, please no, that was a worrying moment. Obviously, you see Curtis limping off, then the prospect is there that it could change, and you could all of a sudden have to make a move. But I don't think Liverpool will be rushing into anything at this moment in time. I think they'll be looking, and like you say, players coming back in the next few weeks. Position they've put themselves in. Some of the younger players making an impact. Kwanzaa, Bradley, Bobby Clark potentially, Owen Beck. So I think they'll feel like they're not in the worst possible shape. They're obviously not really as at risk with the PSR rules as some other clubs. So they've left themselves some wiggle room. But I think if they could do their business, ideally they'd do it in the summer when they can get a good run at what they really want, what they really need, as opposed to having to react late in the January transfer window. I think they'd rather do that. But like we've seen in the past, if the right player comes up at the end of a January window and it's available and it's the one that Liverpool have wanted, they'll do it. They've shown that they'll do it. I think they have the money to do it and the wherewithal to do it. It's just whether that opportunity presents itself. And to be fair, the window really generally has been pretty quiet, hasn't it? There's not been a lot of movement across Europe, really. There's been a few loans, a couple of signings in the Premier League, but I think Sky have been left pretty disappointed with that yellow ticket. It's not been as lively as in previous years, for sure.
So to speak, I think it's only Tottenham that has made it aside, right in Radu Dragusin of Genoa. So it's been extremely quiet. And Brighton, of course.
Brighton bought Valentin Barco.
To at one point, I'm very sure in a few years there'll be another £60 million player that they've developed. That's incredible. I mean, I'm going to contradict myself sort of slightly, but we're on the sort of Sporting Lisbon point. We've seen plenty of the links to Gonçalo Inácio. More recently, to his centre-back partner, Ousmane Diomande. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I wrote about this a week ago. I do feel it's almost a very Kanate sort of esque potential signing, in the sense of you look at Sporting, you see all the links tend to sort of revolve around Inácio, but similarly, a few years ago to Leipzig, we're looking at Upamecano. Everyone thinks we're going to sign Upamecano. We then go for his partner in Kanate. Bayern Munich get Upamecano, and he fits the bill better. I'm curious about Diomande from the perspective of when you look at sort of their comparative aerial ability. So, for instance, this season, it's quite a stark difference. Diomande has a 71.8% aerial duel win rate compared to Inácio's 45.6% win rate, which is absolutely massive for me, because especially when you look at Liverpool's sort of current array of centre-backs, with Kwanzaa being sort of the minimum threshold at about 66.7%, and then you get to Van Dijk's numbers, which are 82%, Kanate 69%, Matip pre-injury was 73.7%. For me, I struggle to envision a reality where we buy a centre-back who wins less than 50% of his aerial duels. Obviously it comes down to sort of a bigger picture than that. But you certainly get the impression with sort of the Klopp signings, he does like a centre-half that's very dominant in his own box. So I don't know. I don't know what you make of those sort of links. Is that for you as well? Sort of almost makes a bit more sense than an Inácio.
Yeah, I can't pretend that I've seen him play football. So look, they're going to be linked with centre. Like we had it. I don't know how many names have you thrown at me on this show? Where what about him? What about him? What about him?
Absolutely.
They're going to be linked with centre backs until they sign one. Diomande, obviously, very minimal experience. 20 odd or 30. Yeah, 28 games in the sport.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the league for Sporting, it's a very small sample size for a centre back. You look at Kanate had a lot more. Obviously, Matip had many more. Even someone like Kabak, I think, had a lot more than that. When they signed on loan, so it'd be a gamble for Liverpool to go and spend it. But he does look from the reports that you read about him and the trajectory that he's on. in his career. He does look like he's a player that's got considerable potential, as indeed does Ignacio, as does Antonio Silva at Benfica, as do many others that have been linked to Liverpool and will continue to be linked. It's whether it's the right deal for Liverpool, the right fit, and I think. And how old is he? 20? He's the right age.
I think it is 20, yeah.
Yeah, he's 20. Yeah, he is. He's just turned 20. So he turned 20 in December. So he's just turned 20. It's the right age. Well, Liverpool got a 20-year-old centre-back in Jarell Kwanzaa. Now, maybe the difference would be what would set a new Liverpool signing apart from someone like Jarell Kwanzaa and Ibrahim Konate. The obvious one would be a left foot. The obvious other one would be the ability to play as a fullback as well. So maybe you'd look at Liverpool squad planning wise being a little bit more sort of, looking for variation. Of course, you'd still want certain elements, and I think you're right to point out that the aerial duels one is huge. Matip, for all his ups and downs fitness wise, he's always had a very consistent record in that regard. Obviously, Virgil van Dijk is the best in the business in that regard. So yeah, I think that would be one of those things. But you'd also want someone who's comfortable on the ball. You'd want someone who, you look. I mean, Konate gets some criticism for his work on the ball. I thought it was excellent yesterday. I thought some of those line-breaking passes that he played, I think that's why we've all been so impressed with Kwanzaa when he's come in. We obviously know Gomez can do it when he plays and Van Dijk. So you need someone who's going to be off that level. It does stand out when you've got someone who maybe isn't as comfortable on the ball at centre-back, someone like Nat Phillips potentially. So there are attributes that Liverpool are definitely going to need. But in terms of who they're going to sign, your guess is as good as mine at the moment. I think we can just safely say it'll be a young player who's on the up.
Absolutely. I think you're right to point out as well, it is more about an aerial dual success rate. It's also about how comfortable they are on the ball, the line-breaking passes. Yeah. And I think
I'm sorry. And how often they're available as well. I mean, that's another key one, isn't it? They've I think that's a massive one. Been a massive success for Liverpool this season with the 4 signings, haven't they? I know McAllister missed a few weeks it was a wound, wasn't it, that he got at Sheffield United. Endo's been available pretty much the whole season. Gravenberg's been available pretty much the whole season. Szoboszlai, until this injury, you've got 30 games, I think, from him this season. So that availability is key for Liverpool if going forward. It's one thing to buy potential and talent, but if they're not on the pitch, then they're no longer potential and talent.
Absolutely. I suppose that's why we've almost seen the links to Nascia as well, because you do look at this sort of passing sort of progressive sort of statistics, and he does rank extremely high compared to sort of other centre backs in Europe's top 5 leagues. So, but it comes down to the bigger picture ultimately, and it, as you say, it is going to be ideally a young defender with a reasonable pool of sort of appearances that the recruitment team can look into and sort of determine, I suppose, is this going to be a huge risk on us? But yes, it's another name, one of many names I'm sure we'll see, certainly ahead of the summer window. And of course, I'm sure we'll be able to keep track of all the latest. Oh yes,
I saw another name link. Got the winner for Leverkusen at the weekend, didn't he? Got the 90th minute winner for Leverkusen in Capia. So yeah, look, I'm sure we'll talk about centre backs between now and May on a regular basis. You can generally rule out ones who Liverpool aren't going to sign when you see them linked with 29-year-old sort of established. Yeah. When you see them linked with Rafael Varane and things like that, or players, you can pretty much tick that one off and say no, that's not happening. But the key now is finding the right one from the sort of, like you say, the big pool of younger up and coming ones playing across Europe's top 5-6 leagues.
Absolutely, and I'd imagine we'd have quite a number to go through around the summer. Sadly, not as much this January, but it's been a quiet January all round for pretty much mostly everyone in the Premier League, barring a few exceptions. Neil, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on here as always. Of course, we can catch your work and all the latest updates around Liverpool Football Club, injuries, general developments, ongoings and transfers, the lot on your Substack. We're covering Liverpool. Do give that a look. Do give that a subscribe. You will not regret it. And of course, you're available on Twitter at Neil Jones Goal. We'll be sharing this conversation as well on our YouTube and our own Substack at empireofthecock.substack.com. Do give that a look. We do more stuff, I believe. I think our other writer, Peter Kenny Jones, has published a piece on a former Liverpool player as well recently in his annals of history. Very much worth giving that a go. But for now, we have been Empire of the Cop Insider. We've had the very lovely Neil Jones. I've been your host, Farrell Keeling. Take care.